Okay, Jack, we are live. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, awesome. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this meeting of CB10 and CB7. For the first discussion we have is from DOT, who's going to discuss the Fifth Avenue Bridge reconstruction project. I see we have a lot of DOT on. I'm not sure exactly who to hand it over to first.
Would you, if you like, I can introduce our team. Leroy, would you rather do
That'd
it?
be great.
Okay, he's
You're on
mute.
mute.
Donine, unfortunately, I can't see everybody. So
Okay.
I don't know who's
No,
here.
no problem, no problem. So I'll kick it off. I'm Jonine Kidder. I'm the Executive Director of Community Affairs and the Chief of Staff at the Division of Bridges. And I see tonight with us is Leroy Branch, who is your community planner liaison from DOT, and also with us is Emily Raquelme, who I believe is the Community Board 7 planner representative as well. With me, I think that's the DOT people. I don't think I missed anybody. With me tonight is our resident engineer, George DeMarco, who will give the presentation. Oh, I forgot my deputy, Waskar Robles. So sorry, Waskar. There he is. I forgot Waskar. George DeMarco is our resident engineer, and probably one of the most important people to you is Neil Patel, who will be your community liaison for the project. Would help me a lot if we don't have to do it now. We could do it later if it's a little cumbersome, just to know who's from board 7 and who's from board 10, so that we can just keep track of exactly who's with us. And Joe, we can actually follow up on that tomorrow if it's easier than going through a lot of introductions now. Whatever is your normal procedure for board 10.
Yeah, I think if you can go ahead and kick off the presentation, we can send you the names of the folks here that are in the meeting afterwards. We typically don't go through like the full set introduction for people on the team.
Very good. So could we have screen sharing, and we'll put up the presentation for you?
You're all ready to screen share. George, let me know if you have a problem. You shouldn't.
I'm going to ask if Neil can put up the presentation and I'll.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, guys. Since it is a fairly large group, if it would be okay, I would prefer if folks could jot down their questions or put them in the chat and let us get to the end. I've been on the case with these two wonderful staff people we have to keep this short and to the point, but we can always go back and go over things when we get to the end, if that's okay. And with that, I'll give it over to George DeMarco, resident engineer.
Thank you, Jonine, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us. As Jonine said, my name is George DeMarco, resident engineer for the project with the Lero Group. And we're here tonight to give you a quick presentation regarding the reconstruction of the Fifth Avenue Bridge. Next slide. So our bridge is located right there in the red circle. To the north is Community Board 7, and to the south side of the bridge is Community Board 10. Next slide. Here we have a few different photos of the bridge, one looking up top, and then the other three from down below. In the top right-hand corner, you can see where the 65th Street Gowanus structure ties into the Fifth Avenue structure. That's the blue structure there on the right-hand side of the image. And then in the lower two pictures, which are almost the same, you can see the railways that run underneath Fifth Avenue. Towards the right-hand side of the photos is New York City Transit. And then down below here where you see the tracks, that is Long Island Railroad and New York Atlantic lines. Next slide, please. Here you can see the top side, the approach views of the structure, the top view looking north and the lower view looking south. Next slide. So project history and scope of work. Next slide. So the current structure is approximately 110 years old with only one roadway rehabilitation done in 1962. In many of the pictures you can see here, the concrete is spalling and cracks are observed in the abutments and the underside of span 4. The Fifth Avenue Bridge also needs to be seismically retrofitted. And if, go back, please. And if I can just take a brief moment here, I do want to say, even though you see these pictures and they look pretty bad, the bridge is safe. There are periodic inspections of the structure to ensure that it's still safe. And as time has gone on, the DOT has done repairs to the bridge to make sure it stays safe for the community. Next slide. So what's the project need? The project need is to replace the existing 4-span Fifth Avenue Bridge superstructure and substructures with a new modern design single-span structure, 172 feet in length, composed of 9 built-up steel girders supported by 2 integral abutments at the ends of the structure. The existing 65th Street and Gowanus structures that are currently supported along the east and west fascias will be modified and subsequently supported independently from the Fifth Avenue structure. In that photo there, you can see that red line that's drawn on the screen. There'll be a new girder and abutment there to support the 65th Street structure. And then where you see that blue girder heading, going right to left on the screen, that will be removed. And there will be one single girder going from the bottom of the image to the top of the image, spanning the entire way. Next slide. So construction phases. In stage 1, which is going to be approximately 3 months, we'll be doing some utility work on the southeast side of the bridge. Stage 2, which will be approximately 12 months, we will be actually removing the current structure on half the bridge and putting in the new structure, sidewalks, and bridge deck. Stage 3 will be approximately 2 months. Again, we will be doing utility work on the southwest side of the bridge. And then stage 4, we will be replacing the remaining portion of the structure in approximately 7 months' time from when that stage starts. During this time, we will, next slide, please. During this time, we will always keep 2 lanes of traffic and we'll have a pedestrian walkway. So in stages 1 and 2, there will be a temporary structure as seen in the bottom 2 images here to make sure that is a walkway for safe pedestrian access. Next slide. Project impacts. 1 sidewalk will be maintained on the bridge at all times. Parking on the bridge will be eliminated throughout construction. There will the subway end line there will be general outages to facilitate some of the main portions of the project. This will be coordinated with New York City MTA. And the B63 bus on Fifth Avenue will operate normally without any disruptions. Traffic and parking impacts. Daily lane closures will begin in March of 2024. Two-way traffic will be maintained during and any lane closures to the two-way traffic will be maintained during any and all lane closures to avoid any traffic congestion and gridlock. Both left turns at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 65th Street will be eliminated during the course of the project during all stages. And only during stage 4, we will eliminate the right-hand turn on 65th Street. NYPD traffic control agents will be on 5th Avenue to assist with flow of traffic during work hours. Next slide. During the course of construction, we will have noise and vibration monitoring. All construction operations will be monitored. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection's 2007 noise code and standards will be followed during the course of the project. And the contractor will install vibration monitoring devices around the job site to monitor vibrations during the course of the project. Down in the lower image here, you can see one of the vibration monitors we installed on New York City Transit's tracks. Community outreach. I'm going to turn it over at this point to Neil, and he will discuss these slides.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Patel. I'm the community liaison for the project. I've been a community liaison for several years, spent many years in Brooklyn Emily actually knows me from my last project quite well. Hopefully she says good things. Our project partners are New York City Transit, LI Del Mar and New York Atlantic Rail, New York State DOT, Buckeye Pipeline Partners, National Grid, Con Edison, and Verizon. Our community outreach includes sending notifications to committee boards 7 and 10, as well as me attending their district cabinet meetings, reaching out to our local elected officials, such as Alexa Aviles and Susan Suong, the local bids, Bay Ridge Fifth Avenue bid, the Sunset Park bid, NYPD, FDNY, and all first responders. My contact information is here on this slide, which we'll share also through email or other means. And obviously that's a photo of me. Our office is right up the street from the Toyota dealership. For those of you familiar with the area, it's the medical building. We actually get a lot of people confusing our office for a doctor's office, which makes it interesting. These are examples of the types of notices we send out to the community via email and door to door. If necessary, depending on the community, we also do translations of the notices if it helps for better understanding.
So I'll take over for this slide, Neil. For schedule and budget, this is a $65 million investment in this area. The contract was awarded in August of 2023. Our contractor was provided notice to proceed in September of 2023. Mobilization began December of 2023. Construction started winter of 2024. Staging will begin in the summer of 2024, and we're expected to complete this project by fall of 2026. All the funds for this project have been provided by state, federal, and city. And I want to thank you all for joining us.
George, if it's okay, I'd like to just go back for a second because this is probably a question that we should have anticipated. Could you go back to slide 8? I think we might like to add a little bit of additional information on slide 8.
Okay.
So if you could speak for a moment to why we have organized the work in the stages the way we did. It's unusual, I think, and it's a likely question from everybody at this meeting. Why the 2 small pieces and then the 2 big pieces? Can you just talk a little bit about the challenges we have in the utility coordination and kind of how we had to divide this up?
Sure. So as anyone can imagine, New York City just isn't what you see on the surface. Underneath New York City is its own network of cables, pipes, and other utilities of that means. So we divided it up into these 4 sections just to make sure that we don't impact the community too much when we're doing the utility work. We want to make sure that the utility work is done in a small phase, and then we can go on to the main structural repair of the bridge, the structural replacement of the bridge. So in organizing it into the fashion you see here, we can do the utility work and then do the actual bridge replacement.
Thanks. I know that's filling in probably some questions some folks had. One of the other things we'll get Mr. Cesarani in just 1 second. Regarding the MTA coordination, I think it's important for us to note that we've been told that the MTA is doing some of their own work on the N line, and that we just recently, within a matter of the past few days, got the proper contacts for the MTA there. But our expectation is that we will be piggybacking on those line outages and not creating any additional line outages for the folks who use that train. We're going to be coordinating with them as closely as we absolutely can to make sure there's no additional impacts to the work. And then with that, I guess we'll move to questions. Mr. Zhang, do you want to MC the questions since you know your members?
Yeah, I can do that. So everyone, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. If you want, if you have any questions, obviously anyone in the room, feel free to physically raise your hand. And then when you do ask a question, please identify whether you're in CB10 or CB7. So first, I see Jay Marie. You have your hand raised.
Thank you, Jeff. I just wanted to know, and I'm Jane Marie Kaptanakis, I'm chair of CB10, but I had also been chair of traffic and transportation. And so this is all very familiar because we had a similar meeting with CB10 and CB7, which was in February of 2021. And when we had that meeting at that time, again, we had looked to many of the same slides and concerns that were raised here tonight. And at that time, the project was due to be completed by 2025. So I see now that it is just, even though it's been delayed by a few years, that you're anticipating that it'll be done by 2026. And then at that point, when we had met several years ago, I just would like to just bring back up again that some of the concerns that had been that, of course, about traffic enforcement being a priority, that the Fifth Avenue Bridge has a shared lane used by cyclists and motorists, and making sure that it is safe for all of our cyclists and our motorists. And while it's not a truck route, as Neil had mentioned, there are a lot of car dealerships in the area, and there was concern whether car carriers may be driving through those surrounding blocks or in that area, and that trucks often use that bridge to get from one side of the community to the other. There were also nearby schools that are around there, and just to please be sure to notify the Office of School Transportation, Pupil Transportation. And there was concern about any bus stops or bus rerouting. At that time, we were told no, that there would not be any bus rerouting, and just to make sure that that's still on the table. But we are always happy to have the opportunity to work as a united and strong community and with our neighbors in Community Board 7. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I want to just go back to a couple of them. I think one of the challenges that we identified early on, both Waskar and I, in terms of the outreach, which is why we were really looking for somebody who had the kind of on the ground experience in outreach that Neil does. In a lot of cases, as you may recall from the work we did on the Belt Parkway, what we've done on some other bridges, it's very different when a bridge is what I call in community, as opposed to arterial bridges like we did Mill Basin, we did Patagate. The stakeholders are a very different group of people. And Neil brings that specific experience from his work in downtown Brooklyn on the DDC project. So part of what he will be doing, and he has already started, is developing the notification networks and starting now several months in advance of building those connections. I've been concerned since we started design about those car dealerships and the parking on the sidewalk, and making sure that they understand that while they will feel, of course, that it's an inconvenience and they probably won't be happy, that we will have to kind of rein them in, I guess, a little bit on some of what they've been doing. We did identify the schools also in design. We probably need to update those contacts. Things do change. And so Neil's also working on that. One of the other things that I recall very much, of course, on the Board 7 side, is that water main condition and what happened there at the intersection, which was quite painful for everybody in the community. And we know that coming out of that project, there are likely to be some concerned community members there, and particularly, I'll say, some skeptics that we will be able to deliver the project. And that's, again, why we've really brought in a liaison who has that ability to kind of get out door to door and actually meet with people and speak to them. I don't know if the same woman who owned that building, or who was the person who kind of was in the press on a regular basis, I don't know if she's still there, but whoever is there will obviously, they're right on that corner. and we will be working, of course, with all of them. I will ask George to speak to the bike lane. I think, during construction for a short period of this, we may have to have a shared lane. But our goal in DOT is to always try to maintain a separate bike lane if we can.
So, Neil, if you can go back to the slide where we have the section view.
You're playing now.
Share.
Yeah.
Yeah, Janine, I was gonna say, I think it's a shared bike lane right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'll,
So we'll make sure that, yeah, we'll maintain the same access. So this is what the law requires, that if we are occupying a lane, that we maintain the bike. But additional to that, because there's construction, and Janine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the specs require that we have signage indicating way in advance to the bikers and cyclists that, that they need to merge, or they're gonna merge in traffic, that there's construction ahead, so they're not taken by surprise when they reach the actual work site.
exactly, that's the case. And I don't believe there's a bus stop. At one point, I think we might have had a bus stop that was going to be, I don't think we have a bus stop. And I have to just, I thought the last time that we had gotten together with you was just before COVID. I think it was one of the last meetings we had in person, and I think that was down in the Borough Commissioner's office. I think it was in February of 20. Don't remember a meeting in 21, but then again, we have a lot of meetings, so I may have missed that one. But that's kind of been my guidepost with this, that this was kind of the cutoff point in just before COVID. And George is going to bring the job in. I do want to just give him a minute. George has come to us from the massive project on the Van Wyck Expressway over at Atlantic Avenue, that massive state project. He's been an integral part of that, and really understands how to bring in big projects. And we're very happy to have somebody with the depth of experience that George has. It's an unusually experienced and seasoned team for us, and I think you're going to be very happy with this team.
Okay.
Mr.
All right,
Zhang?
thank you. Yes. We
Larry?
have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You can go in the room. There's two attendees who are not panelists that have questions. So once we're done with the question in the room, we need to turn to them.
Okay, so Larry, you're up.
You said potential impacts. You didn't mention the New York Atlantic Railway, the Long Island Railroad. You listed all of the impact of the N train, but then again, you didn't list the New York Atlantic Railway as the freight railway. So it is economically important that they're notified. They keep out. Do you foresee that the railroad service would be?
Yeah, George, you want to take that? I know we have a force account with them.
Yes, we're coordinating with them almost every week. Actually, we're coordinating with both MTA and New York Atlantic LIRR weekly. We don't see any long-term closures of any one of the Long Island Railroad New York Atlantic tracks. At most, it'll be a day or two at a time. And at that time, it would only be one track out of service, and all traffic would be on the other two. But these are freight lines right now. They're not commuter rail at this point for Long Island Railroad.
But still, they may be impacted. That's why.
Correct. And we are working hand in hand with them to make sure that's as few minimum as possible.
Okay. Let's turn it to Edward Serna, who has a question in the attendees list.
Ed, you should be allowed to unmute yourself now.
Ed, can you hear us?
Can you hear
If
us,
you're
Ed?
speaking, you're muted. Okay. Since Ed is not speaking, Katie, you have your hand up.
I do. I don't know if my video is enabled, but you can
Yes,
hear me
yeah.
okay, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. I can't see myself, but that's fine. Nice to see you all. My name is Katie Walsh. I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee for Community Board 7, which is Sunset Park and Windsor Terrace. And you've got John DeLuper in the room with you, which is great, who's vice chair. A couple of questions that I had. Neil, I will take you up on the offer to come to your office to be able to talk a little bit about community outreach. I think that's something that we're really interested in. So I'll just go through all the questions that I have, and then you guys will address them as you need to. On outreach, I wanted to better understand, you showed us who your partners are, but I wanted to better understand the businesses that you've spoken to. You know, on the impacted blocks as a result of the reroutes. So you showed us a little bit about like where traffic is expected to go, but I'm not gonna remember the specific. There's a mosque that's up on 6th Avenue, and I think it's on 64th or 65th. That, you know, again, during certain times of day has a lot of participation and cars double parking, but like, you know, people are accessing the mosque. And so I just wanted to understand, this is the general question, which is just like, what has your outreach been to institutions, community organizations, and businesses? I haven't really heard enough in the presentation about the rerouting that will happen, like where do we think traffic will go, and then how will it impact those businesses? So that's sort of a two-part, right? Community outreach and engagement. What does that look like? The second thing,
I was gonna say, can I just jump in on that one?
Yes,
Because I
no
think,
problem.
in fairness to Neil, since we're not really expecting to have active construction for several more months, that's an activity that is just underway. He's just building out that network now of identifying the businesses, identifying all of the religious institutions, schools, etc. This is kind of the pre-construction phase. So two of the things that are in preparation right now is something that we call a one pager, which is kind of the replacement of old-fashioned brochures. We used to spend more time kind of being complicated with our brochures. They had trifolds and things. They were much more complicated. We didn't find that they communicated as well as a one pager. So Neil and Waskar have been working on a one pager, trying to get that wrapped up. I had hoped we'd have it for tonight. It's not quite there yet. I didn't want to go with something before it was final. And then we do have another outreach tool that we've developed during COVID. It's essentially an oversized postcard, and what it has on it is all the summary of the project information. What is the proper project name? What's the address? What's Neil's contact info? It has a photo of the bridge. And these were, I think they were just printed maybe today. And Neil will be using them as, I like to say, kind of as an icebreaker going in and out of the businesses. When you walk in to talk to a business, it's kind of hard to just say, hi, here I am. Do you want to write down my name? We use these as icebreakers for him to go in and speak to business people. I kind of did a little role playing, go into the car dealership. Well, the manager's not here right now, you know, that kind of thing. Sometimes you got to go back 2, 3, 4 times before you speak to a person who's of authority, whether that's in a business or a religious institution. So he'll be out with those cards in probably in March, getting ready. And then what I was hoping we would be able to do is sit down with both bids, because the bids know really where are the key business people. They understand the leadership within their own organizations. They understand, as you're saying, the trucking businesses that have truck impacts. So all of this is unfolding, and will come, and we'll be happy to, as we said, sit down with you at the field office. It's just a little early for some of the things, and I think we're of like minds, but it's a little bit early for being able to answer your question specifically right now.
Okay, that's helpful to know that it's part of the plan. So that sounds good. And then, so I'll just do the 2 other questions. So just in terms of being a pedestrian and being a cyclist, I am both of those things. And then also like accessing Bay Ridge with, again, like as a pedestrian, but like with limited mobility issues. So these are the things that I want to raise, is that trying to be a cyclist or a pedestrian on 4th Avenue to get into Bay Ridge is terrifying. On 4th Avenue, it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, and this is being a pedestrian, being a cyclist, a lot of people make a choice, right? There's a protected bike lane on 4th Avenue. People move themselves up to 5th because it's not you can get through in a way that feels different. And that's partially mechanics, but I just want to say in terms of user experience. So I am very concerned about this issue of like what happens during construction for that access. And I'm thinking particularly about cyclists, but I'm also thinking about pedestrians. And so I want to elevate that, because the sort of like, there's the legal requirements of what DOT has to do during construction. And I know in terms of like what has to be protected, but you don't want that on your conscience. And I don't want that on my conscience, that some construction has led to, frankly, a fatality as a result. And I know there's the legal minimum requirements of what you guys have to do, but I really want to say I don't feel comfortable or reassured with what I've seen, even though it's early stages, around how we're really protecting cyclists and how we're protecting pedestrians. So maybe it didn't show up in the slides, but the intent is there. But again, like what keeps me up at night is frankly, like people being killed on our streets. And I'm really concerned about that, especially during construction. That's more a statement than than anything else.
No,
So I just want to,
I mean-
but I want to see it, because it like I didn't really feel confident about. I didn't feel confident about it from the presentation of what I've seen so far.
Sure, and I appreciate that. We, as I said, in the interest of time, perhaps we condensed a bit too much. But I think what Neil has up right now is the construction phasing slide. And you can see that as we went, particularly from preliminary design to final, we added an entire temporary pedestrian bridge. It's in the slide, and it has a protected concrete barrier.
But where
between
is the
vehicles.
cyclists? Where do they go?
They're in the shared space in the road.
But
I
if
mean,
we're already condensing people, that's what I think what I'm trying to express is like, we're already condensing people and then we're putting them in smaller routes. I don't think that's good enough.
Okay, the issue, we can certainly take another look and see if there's something we could do. The problem is the site is extremely constrained. There's just a limited amount of real estate for us to do what we need to do. I don't know where we
Sure.
could put an additional bike facility. I'll
Janine-
ask the team to take a look at it.
I'd just like to add that, I mean, like so there is a construction barrier, that there won't be construction in the available lanes, which are the same width, they will be the same width as they are without construction, right?
Yes, I think what the representative from Board 7 is asking for is some additional facility for bikes. And we can go back to CSS and certainly take a look at it. But I know that this is a really constrained site, which is why we actually had to build that temporary walkway completely cantilevered off the existing bridge. Otherwise, we would not have had a sidewalk. So that was, I feel very confident on the protection of the pedestrians. It meets ADA requirements. It has an outboard fence. It has a barrier between the peds and the cars. I think that was a huge step towards protecting the pedestrians, because ped traffic here is pretty significant. As I said, we could take a look back and see. I think the point Waskar is making is the condition under construction won't be different than it is now, which is not optimal. I understand what you're saying. It's not an optimal situation for cyclists, but I won't leave the meeting without telling you we'll take a look at it and see if there's any way we can do any more.
Okay, and then the last question is, maybe this is a general question that we've posed before to MTA and others, which is just around the amount of illegal dumping that happens in and around this facility is really bad, and that there hasn't been any cleanup. I just wanted to ask you guys, in this context of like the planning stages, the maintenance, the follow-up. I know, your job is just on this construction bit, but just like, the illegal dumping here is awful, and like it has not been touched or cleaned up. So who's accountable for that? And also, like, why has that not been addressed for so long?
I cannot answer for Long Island Railroad or New York and Atlantic. The right of way that you can see in these slides and in the slides, I think on slide 3, The graffiti is down there, and all of those conditions are part of the right of way of the railroads.
So are they
Um,
accountable and responsible for the like air conditioners, sofas, like God knows
Yes.
what else? And
Yes.
so then who do we go to talk about that?
We can find some contacts for you, but let me just add, we are not permitted to go onto those tracks. We
I can-
absolutely are not.
Josephine, can you just help answer this question?
I will jump in. So Katie did share those concerns before the meeting, and I did reach out to the MTA, Long Island Railroad, who is the parent of the owner of the tracks. Portion of the tracks are the Sea Beach line, that's MTA New York City Transit. The other is leased to New York Atlantic Railway. We have in the past done interagency meetings, and that ball is already underway. We do hope to very shortly have an interagency joint meeting with MTA, Long Island Railroad, New York Atlantic Railway, all partners, specifically about cleaning this up. And we would also like to have New York City DOT, because during this project, I mean, certainly if there is dumping in and around the DOT area, also with the Department of Sanitation to come up with a real plan to get this cleaned and not ignored for so long. I agree, Katie. I went down there after we spoke. I haven't, really looked down into the tracks for some time, and it was horrible. It was horrific. It was just terrible. So that's underway now. I just want to share that with you, and I'll keep you in the loop with that. I did speak to Jeremy as well from Board 7.
And we would be happy to join that meeting and help in any way we can.
Thank you, Leland. I think I see Ed now. I know Ed is back. He was trying before. Ed, sorry. I just saw him pop up on my screen. He was waiting.
Good evening, everyone. Edward Cerna, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Alex Aviles. I want to thank DOT for being here tonight and presenting, and Chair Kapitanakis and the committee team and folks from Community Board 7, my home board, for being here. I'll be brief. I just want to thank DOT for acknowledging, and I'm going to call it sinkhole because I was living at 61st Street when it happened, and I want to just acknowledge that harm that was caused during sinkhole and why we need to get this right, because that project went on for way too long and really impacted a lot of people. So again, thank you for acknowledging it, and would underscore DOT coordinating with the MTA and all the relevant utilities here to ensure that we are meeting those project timelines and not causing delay. Also, I have two questions. One is, I heard you say, Ms. Kidder, that the design is final, but I think this ties into the trash issue that we also see on the street level and not just on the track. There's not a lot of lighting in this area, and I'm wondering if there will be improved lighting on the pedestrian bridge following the construction. And then secondly, I didn't see this in the slide, but where will the staging for construction take place? Because that was also another issue during sinkhole, where it wasn't just the impacted area, but you were doing a lot of staging on the side streets in front of residential homes. So again, thank you, everyone, and I'll leave it at that.
George, can you speak to the lighting?
The lighting, we will be replacing the street lighting as part of the structure replacement. I can go back and check and get back to you on the extent of if we're adding additional lights, but it will be brought up to the most recent codes.
In terms of the second part of your question, in terms of staging, I think one of the things we've been extremely clear about with the contractor in all of our meetings now is that there's absolutely nowhere in this community for his employees to park. We will not tolerate them parking on sidewalks. We will not tolerate them parking in people's driveways. It's a pet peeve of mine. For many, many years, contractors tend to move into communities and kind of just take over, if you will. So in terms of employees and employee cars, all you gotta do is drive around the neighborhood and see there isn't enough parking for the people who live there. In terms of staging, my understand, George, is that our staging footprint is very small in each one of these phases, and the contractor has been told there is a yard that he's rented. Our own employees, including George and Neil, and our own employees will not be parking on the street. The contractor has provided off-street parking for them, as part of his contract requirements. So we're keeping staging to the absolute minimum for his equipment that he physically needs to conduct the work.
And quickly on that, if I may,
Go ahead.
I want to echo what Katie said. I understand that you might be meeting the legal minimum of having some lighting, but again, this you can tell the difference in lighting on the Bay Ridge side. There's the two dealerships who have a lot of their own lighting, but the moment you cross over, it gets really dark. So I would say understand you're doing the one, but if we could do more, that's what we would advocate for. And where could you just quickly up where that rented lot is that
I don't, to tell you the truth, I don't have the address tonight, but I know that the parking, George, correct me if I'm wrong, the parking for the team at the office is within the structure?
Correct. It's the building across the street. There's a parking garage from our office.
And that is for our team, including George, Neil, the DOT employees, the inspectors, the entire REI team has off-street parking available. The contractor's yard, I don't exactly know where it is. We'll get that address and I can provide that to the community board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In
Is
the
there any
room,
questions in the room? Yeah.
maybe seven vice chair has hand raised, and Carmen, then Larry.
Hello, I'm John DeLuper, Vice Chair of Transportation for CB7, and I wanted to ask a couple follow-ups on some of the stuff that was mentioned there. So first, with the lighting that just came up, with the new lights, are they going to be standard street lights, or are they going to be the Vision Zero bulbs that DOT has employed in some of the areas with the dual arms? Do you know that, or is it too early?
I'd have to go back and check our contract plans. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get you that answer.
Okay. And related to that, I'll add to Edward's concern about the lighting and say that the lighting under the Gowanus Expressway continues to be a challenge. And that area being one so nearby it, I think that DOT should continue to factor in those lighting issues and continue working on that. I do want to ask, though, in terms of the people you reached out to, is the Buckeye Pipeline involved? As I understand it, their infrastructure goes up in through that rail cut. Are they part of the team? And is that correct that their pipeline of flammable jet fuel is near this construction site?
I'll take that one. Yes, we have been in communication with Buckeye, and we have put plans in place and shielding to protect that line. If you go over the structure right now, you'll notice an orange fencing along the tracks. That's to notify all of our crews where this pipeline is, to make sure that they don't stage any material on top of it, and they keep away from that area to avoid disrupting any of that fuel flow.
Okay, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that.
Let me just, if I could, John, just to add, Buckeye, as you know, runs, through the whole city, from Staten Island all the way out to Queens and into the Bronx. We in Bridges in particular, we've worked with them at many locations. And that's why there are kind of basic standards that the design engineering team has to bring into the project to meet their own code of what they give us. They want their facilities protected as well. So it's something that we deal with all the time, and I'm confident that we've got a very good relationship with them. The other issues that do come up with National Grid and Con Edison is you don't know until you open the street exactly is everything where Con Ed has told you it is. And in a lot of cases with construction, I know George could speak to it from his experience, probably so can Neil. You just don't know. In a lot of cases, utility coordination winds up being the source of a lot of delays on the project, because you can find some facilities that Con Ed says, oh, we thought some other contract before this had removed that or moved it out of the way, or somebody did move it and those changes weren't always recorded. And so that's always a risk for us in dealing with both Con Ed, National Grid, Verizon, et cetera, that we don't always know exactly where their facilities are until you actually start the work. And so that's one of the first things that I think will be done, is the test pitting to make sure that those facilities are where they've told us they are.
Okay, great. And And then moving on to the outreach portion, you discussed the DOT discussed your one pager and your oversized postcard. Are these going to be multilingual? And with that email, are we able to sign up for these notifications now, or does that become live later on?
You can certainly provide the information to Neil now. He's building out the notification network. And as you can see, Neil put up now, the Korean brochure was one we used for Roosevelt Avenue out in Flushing. The public notice, which is one that we pump out, hundreds and hundreds in a year, that happens to be the Spanish language version of our notice that we put out to the community for the Broadway Bridge between Manhattan and the Bronx. We can produce material in any languages that you in the community feel are important.
Right.
And it's one of the questions we have for you tonight.
Exactly.
Is to
We
come
wanted
back
to ask you
us.
that, yeah.
Excuse me.
No, I wanted to, we wanted to ask the meeting, the
You
community
can-
boards for this information, what languages they thought we could provide, because we've done everything from Arabic, simplified, and Chinese, Spanish, Korean. So we're happy to assist with that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would definitely say from our board, English, Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic are big languages.
Yeah, that's very.
So one of the things that we do struggle with just a little bit is in reaching into communities, and we've kind of learned a little bit about this from working particularly on Canal Street in Manhattan. There is simplified Chinese, which is what we're told is the more common kind of vernacular. Seems to be some kind of a bit of a generational divide, that those Chinese speakers who tend to be younger work more frequently in the simplified Chinese. The standard or traditional Chinese, whose characters are much finer as opposed to the simplified, that my experience, what we've been told, tends to be the older community of Chinese speakers. And those we've learned have tended to be people who have less English proficiency. And so that's one of the conversations we're thinking to have with the bids, because they are in direct communication with the business owners and the business operators, and they can help us kind of tease that apart so that we're getting things right, because the translations that need to be done external to DOT are quite expensive, and we want to make sure that we're doing things in a way that really meets the needs of the community. One of the other experiences that we've had on work we've done down on Atlantic Avenue, we worked to produce material in Arabic and then learned that a lot of the Arabic business people there were also already proficient in English. We have no problem producing the material in Arabic if we're told that's what the need is. But the feedback that we got from going door to door on Atlantic Avenue was most of us are proficient in English. And so we'll have that conversation and develop whatever it is the community tells us is the best need.
Can I just ask a flash follow-up here? So the construction staging will start in summer 2024. You'll be building out the notification network now. What is the timeline before the construction staging? Like what is the pathway between now, which is February, and sometime summer 24? Like what are the various milestones that you're looking to track in terms of outreach?
I think that's something that we're still actually putting together, but off the top of my head, clearly we need to set up the conversations with the two bids. I don't know if the bids there also happen to have merchants associations. In my own experience with the bids, sometimes there are multiple business organizations within one community. Sometimes the bid is not the only business association in a community. There may be a cultural business community that's not just for Fifth Avenue. Whoever wants to have a conversation with us will have those. And then from there, what we're hoping to do is get the most accurate contact information. Neil can go door to door, and that's great. But we do feel that the people who work with these communities for a living, day in and day out, will be able to tell us these are the key people that you need to be communicating with. And that will happen between March and in April. And then, as you see on the screen right now, the notification on the left, which indicates that there's active work, those go out 7 days in advance, anytime that we're taking a lane out of service. And those will be done routinely by Neil as the progress continues on the project.
And that's done door to door?
It
As
can
well as-
be done door to door. We've been more successful with email outreach, But again, if people tell us they'd prefer to have it in person, we're happy to do that as well.
Yeah, we'd have to get back to you on that.
Carmen, I
Generally,
think you had a,
I just wanted to say, again, bridges that are in community like this, I find that door to door is still a useful tool, because what it does is it also gives him the opportunity to be able to speak to people and say to them, how's it going? How is everything? Do you have any other issues or concerns while I'm here? It helps to develop that relationship, which again is very different than the bridges that are on arterials, where we don't have communities nearby and all we have are websites and email addresses and massive mailing lists. So in this community, I know Neil is going to be doing a lot of one-on-one.
all right, thank you. Carmen, I think you had a question.
Yes, it's concerning the dumping. Since they're gonna do so much work there, is it possible for them to start adding cameras there and putting more signs and maybe raising the height of the fences or the walls in that area?
Do you mean for the railroad to put in cameras?
Yeah, so that where there's illegal dumping, if there's dumping now, there could be dumping again afterwards.
Sure, I think that's part of an agenda for the conversation that Josephine said she's putting together with the railroads.
All right, and then the second part is, like going door to door. The first thing that comes to mind is, I've lived in Bay Ridge 40 years, is the number of people that live in Bay Ridge, but the number of people who come in for different things. Like the people who come in for churches, the senior centers, the movie theater, doctor's offices, NYU, the banks. A lot of them, when we've had different notices to give out, I have a good relationship with a lot of these different facilities where I could say, can you post this, or can you put it up on a bulletin board or behind a glass case, or leave them on the counter? And most of them for something like this would say yes, because they know in some way they're going to be impacted. Because driving back and forth or any construction, it's like you're hoping it goes well, but it doesn't take much for something to go wrong. But I would say I would need flyers, because the senior center, a lot of them have phones, but they still have outdated phones. And they're very good about letting you put stuff there, and the movie theater, all of them. So we would just need, I could send some out by email, but I would also need some physical postcards, whatever you want to send out.
And we'll be doing all of that. And one of the things that we've always done is we've asked those kind of larger footprint institutions, would you mind adding our notification, our one pager to whatever other material you're sending out? Obviously, a bank is not able to send that out. Their corporate regulations wouldn't allow them to do it. But if you're familiar at all with the Mike Raccioppo down at Community Board 6 pushes out a tremendous amount of information, and he does it once a week. Every single thing we ever send him is in that material that he pushes out every week. He must have thousands of people on his website, on his mailing list. I think he uses Listserv for that. But any help you want to be to supporting us in that regard, introducing Neil to some of these folks that you know, getting started with using bulletin boards, etc. That's all part of the work that Neil's got a tremendous amount of experience with, and we appreciate your offering, Carmen, to help us with that.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing, if I could just say one thing about cameras. Cameras have not been proven to be particularly effective if there is not a person monitoring it in real time. We've tried cameras at a number of locations, and unless the camera is connected actually to a police department or other facility, it doesn't really yield the kind of enforceable information that I think people have an expectation. And we've also experienced a tremendous amount of vandalism. We posted cameras in several places, and people who tend to do these activities, some people are, of course, completely unintelligent and will show up with a truck with a license plate on it and get out and face the camera, and you actually can see their face. But those are few and far between. Our experience has been that more often people come up and they've got a hoodie and they've got a face mask on. And then when we've shown this to PD, they come back and say, this could be anybody. and it's really not something that's been helpful. I certainly have no objection to having a conversation with the railroads about cameras. I just want to make sure coming out of this conversation that there's not an expectation that they have been proven to be the most useful tool.
There was another
Is it
implied
okay-
question where the question was how high the wall was going to be. How high is the wall right now on the bridge, and how high will the walls of the bridge going to be?
George, can you take that one?
So you're talking on the bridge itself or off the
Yeah.
bridge? On the,
On the bridge, I believe.
okay.
During construction or post-construction?
Post construction.
Our standard is that there will be a minimum 8-foot fence over any live traffic, whether that's a waterway, a railroad, or another road. It's an 8-foot high fence that actually has an 18-inch curve return. What we've done we actually spent quite a bit of time doing a national study. The idea of the 18-inch return is that it does tend to, although not completely successfully, it does tend to diminish the opportunities for people not only to throw things down, but it diminishes the concurrence of jumpers. If you've got to climb an 8-foot fence, the other thing is the aperture on the chain link is only 1 inch. And it's extremely different to fit your toe, whether you have a sneaker or some kind of a shoe, to get yourself into a 1-inch aperture on chain link. And to then climb up, you reach a point at where the fence comes back over your head. And so that's the standard we use now on all of our bridges, is that those fences have to be a minimum of 8 feet high with an 18-inch return.
Okay, thank you. Katie, you have a question?
I did, yeah. And I just wanted to say the issue, like high fences, cameras, whatever, it's about the accountability on cleaning up and not just having it be when like someone sends an email, like just to that point that you were making. That's what we need. We need that accountability and that regularity, because when people think it's a dumping ground because it's a dumping ground, then it just gets worse. And so I think that's like the issue that we're trying to acknowledge, is that like it doesn't have to be an email that happens every like 10 years, that then there leads to some discussion about cleanup. There needs to actually be a timeline and a process. So I really hope that, yes, we're talking about the context of the Fifth Avenue reconstruction and the bridge, but just like there's actually an agency in charge of this and they need to do their job. And so that's what I mean, and if it is the accountability as the parent organization because of the railroads, then like we'll figure that out. But I don't understand if this was happening in like not Fifth Avenue and the adjacent parts between Sunset Park and Bay Ridge. If it was in Brooklyn Heights, this would not stand. There wouldn't be this illegal dumping that just gets ignored. And I'm tired of like the fact that these agencies turn a blind eye to Sunset Park regularly, and especially this area. There are people who live there. This is their home. And it seems to be that the agencies are okay with the fact that there's just dumping that happens. So that's what I want to say. It's like the walls being high or cameras being there. No, there's responsibility that is not happening. So yeah, I wanted to make that point because it's not an engineering solution that we need to like come up with. It's just like a regularity. But the other point, which was kind of a question, and you did talk about this, was like the issue of the businesses that are many, like the car dealerships in particular, really bad on the Bay Ridge side of 65th Street. I am a crazy person that goes and talks to them and says like, you guys can't park your cars on Fifth Avenue. And they're like, like, cause there's no enforcement. And I heard you say DOT said, oh, we would talk to them about it. But that again, right now is all NYPD enforcement and they don't do anything. Like you call 311 and they just close it and they say they investigated it and they don't. And DOT knows this. We've talked to Emily about this over and over and over again about 311 complaints about parking on the sidewalk. What's going to be different? I just want to hear in your words, what's going to be different about this, that you guys are suddenly going to be able to do this? Because again, there's tons of sidewalk parking, particular in these areas, which again, I'm saying no man's land, but literally people, this is their homes. This is where people live and businesses are, but it's just like treated like a wasteland by agencies. So the question is specifically, how are you gonna, what's gonna be different? Is NYPD actually gonna do enforcement? Is 311 for these calls for sidewalk parking when construction's happening? Is it actually gonna suddenly work? I just want to hear about like what's gonna be different this time, because we have to just be real about this doesn't actually, like right now, the system doesn't work that way.
Okay, I was just kind of waiting for you to finish. We are going to encourage any of the businesses or community people to bring any parking issues related to the project to Neil. That's why he's there, and he will be dealing with them in real time in a much more efficient way than 311 circulating something around perhaps many different agencies. That's his role. But in terms of sidewalk parking, anything that's within our project limits, we will have the ability to tow those vehicles out of our contractor's way. I mean, I can't speak to going several blocks away beyond our project limits and helping with what I think is a bigger issue than this bridge project. But within the project limits, we cannot have parking that obstructs a contractor from what's the term is called prosecuting his work. He's got to have an open and clear work site, and we've got to maintain traffic on the portion of the road that remains open during construction. And so we certainly don't want to do that. We want to encourage business people to cooperate, but we will share with them that if they don't, and those vehicles are there as the contractor needs to get into the space, that they will be relocated. They aren't towed. You know, when you park, like, I don't know, you see a sign in a supermarket or something that says, if you leave your car here, we're going to tow it to North Dakota, you know, and they put a phone number there. It's not that kind of towing. It's what's called relocation tow. The vehicles are towed to the nearest legal spot within the community. They're not permitted to put them at a fire hydrant or a bus stop or a driveway, but it's a program that we call relocation tow. It's similar to what's done by the contractors who do the DDC milling and paving projects, where if cars don't move after they've had the flyers put on them and people have gone door to door, then the contractor will hook it up, tow it around the corner. Those lists are provided to the local precinct so that when car owner John Smith goes to the site and says, oh my God, my car was stolen, and he calls 911, 911 says, what's your plate? Oh, okay, you left your car in the milling and paving zone. Your car was relocated 3-4 blocks away, whatever. You can go there and get it. It's a program, again, we've done many times in Bridges and Community. Wascar's had a lot of experience with it on a project up on Riverside Drive in Manhattan. And it's something that, you know, we're prepared to do if we don't get cooperation.
All right, thank you. Jay Murray.
Thank you. Just to go back to one of the comments that I had before about that shared bike lane, one of the concerns that had come up was that it not be made narrower than what it currently is, because that was something that had come up at our previous meetings in 2021. And the other thing that had come up as questions from, I was checking over my old notes, was people were asking how many parking spaces were being eliminated, because there will be no parking on the bridge for the full amount of time that this construction is happening, obviously. But that was one of the questions we had at that time. So just to ask it again, because that may be something that Jack or our friends from Community Board 7 are asked as well. Thank you.
George, do you know that off the top of your head, or is that something you need to take a look at the drawings and get back to the community boards on?
Well, I can't give you an exact number of how many spots, but I will say anything that's on the bridge structure will be eliminated during the construction and then will be returned to the community once construction has completed.
Right, and I think it was that we didn't know at that time for sure, and just if there was a ballpark number for people to have a better idea.
Okay, I'll get a number and provide it to Jonine.
Okay, well, one of the things I just I don't want to lose the train of thought, that being a senior myself now, if I don't write it down, I forget. One of the things that is a contract requirement is for the contractor, for the entire duration of his work, to remove snow from the sidewalk. This is a very big thing. It's another pet peeve of mine, is that we don't have the resources to do every bridge in the city. We have 806 bridges in our New York City inventory, and we don't have the opportunity to get to them all. There are many that we don't get to remove the snow before Mother Nature does with the sun. But it is a requirement in every construction contract we have that the contractor will be required to remove snow. And he did already during the first snowstorm. He was out and removed the snow on the sidewalk, and he will continue to do that until with the current sidewalks, it's his responsibility. When we put in the temporary walkway, it'll be his responsibility. It'll be his responsibility throughout the project to remove snow.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Zoom or in the room?
In the room, we have Larry, and I think I saw on Zoom Chris's hand raised, so we could go in that
Larry?
order.
Is this a more rehabilitation than a reconstruction, actually replacing the structural elements of the bridge?
It is a rehabilitation, yes.
All right, and then as far as rehabilitation protection, I was wondering, how are you going to be protecting the railroad and the subway? Are you putting netting, or are you putting a shed or some sort of a catch platform, or has that been worked out yet? I was thinking how that could, any debris falling from onto the tracks, that's.
So we will be installing a shielding underneath the current structure to protect any debris falling onto the tracks, and also give our contractor a work platform to work off of. But there will be a primary shielding under the structure during any demo activities that happen on the deck surface to protect the secondary shielding.
And you have to you say you're retrofitting the for seismic. What does that involve with, from an engineering point of view? How do you?
So
how is that done, out of curiosity?
So it's all in the design of the integral abutments. It'll be able to take I'm trying to come up with a quick way to explain it. Based on the new abutments and making it one single structure, it'll be able to sway with any seismic activity that comes. I can circle back with you and give you some of the drawings and such. That display that.
The abutments going to be replaced, or are they going to be?
The abutments are going to be replaced. So the two abutments that are out there now are being replaced with integral abutments.
It looks pretty cracked up, pretty much on the right side, spalled pretty badly.
Yes, that's on the north side of the structure by New York City Transit.
Yeah, riding on the N train. That's
Our new abutment will actually be built behind that abutment.
You said it's safe, but I mean, it doesn't certainly look like it's just not gonna fail. So we're gonna say
it's not.
The way that we're looking at on the right hand side, that's
Spall is not an indicator of a structural defect. In particular, spalls tend to be in front of the structural elements. George, correct me if I'm wrong, but the structural elements are behind the concrete that is failing.
Right. And spalling is kind of what you see there on the left-hand picture, where you can get that rust line in the middle of the girder coming out. So these are concrete encased girders. A spall would be the concrete chipping off and exposing the girder underneath.
Maybe you can point to it? I'm not sure everybody else can see it. You're talking about the vertical element, not the wall.
Correct. Neil, if you can move your mouse on the left-hand picture on the girder coming out from the wall where the rusted section is.
Right there.
That's gonna have protection, or that's just you're gonna have to protect that for sure.
Okay. Chris, we'll move to you.
Thanks, Jack. No, I had just, as help to DOT, in their outreach and engagement, and, as a resource, Department of Youth and Community Development has a section of their website called Discover DYCD, searchable by zip code, so that you can find all the area community development organizations that are, funded by the city in the area for for those connections. Also, they're faith-based organizations that are funded as well. And then the only other thing I think the question was already asked, but I guess somewhat to Katie's point that, when the project is completed and the parking is restored, is it going to be something similar to the current bike sharing that it is now, or is that going to be sort of expanded or revamped? I think that was already asked and answered though. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, I don't think there are any plans to change the configuration that's there now. I mean, that was a component part of the design that was vetted through the other divisions in DOT. We're here tonight from the Division of Bridges, but in the design phase, we coordinate very closely with pedestrian unit, with the bike unit, with the citywide concrete units. All of the other divisions in DOT are part of the design process before we get to where we are now, where we have an active contract. So I believe that the plan is to have the same facility that's out there now. And I'm not a bike person, not saying I don't own a bike, I do. But my understanding is with the protected bike lane on 4th Avenue, the expectation, and while I'm very familiar with the area, I was the community liaison on the Ridge Boulevard and 2nd Avenue bridges back in 1998, 99. So I'm very, very familiar with working with Board 10. I understand completely the point that Katie's making about a different experience between traveling on 4th Avenue, traveling on 5th. But I think that the agency's position is that essentially what's there on 5th Avenue now is what we will be putting back.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the DOT? Okay, if not, thank you, Joe, Jonine, George, Neil. Any other parting remarks that you guys want to make? Otherwise, we'll hear from Neil quite a bit. I assume we'll have a couple months.
I just want to say again, thank you. Coming back to Board 10, Josephine and I have known each other, I don't know, Joe, 20 years or more of working together. And we're happy to be back in Board 10. We've done a lot of work together on 17th Avenue, 27th Avenue, the 4th lane off the Verrazano, our Bay Ridge Avenue Bridge. It feels like, a good fit. And we're happy to be back in Board 10. And if, as well as Board 7, let me not offend our neighbors in Board 7, particularly Katie. What I do want to say is if there are questions, the minute the meeting is over, it's been my experience, someone will think of a question. Please feel free to send those to Leroy and Emily. They will get them to us. And as soon as we have more specifics on the schedule, which I think is the question that pretty much everybody's looking for, once we have a tightened schedule and we really know when the contractor will be doing active work, you will hear from all of us. And Neil will be attending your cabinet meetings. We can come back to the Transportation Committee meeting. Leroy and Emily, I know, go to them on a regular basis. They'll be getting updates from us to share with you there. So the dialogue will continue continuously throughout the project.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, all right. I think we have a couple other items on our agenda just for CB10. Thanks for the CB7 folks in DOT for joining. And feel free to drop off anyone else who may not care about the rest of CB10 stuff. So we have two. Thank you, Joni.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Great. So I think we have two next things to discuss through as part of CB10 agenda here. We need to discuss the follow-up for pedestrian safety, what we're going to do. I know Josephine has some updates for us there. And then we also need to discuss the new rules for outdoor dining, which I think are now officially in place for later this year. Community board does have a part to play in that, specifically for commentary on both the sidewalk as well as roadway housing, but specifically for the sidewalk one, I think we play a little bit of a larger role there. But Josephine, do you mind if I hand it over to you?
No worries. I just wanted to share with the members of the Traffic and Transportation Committee that Brooklyn Borough Hall had a meeting of the Borough Service Cabinet, and New York City DOT was present and gave a nice presentation on the new outdoor dining rules. And they will be coming to our Traffic and Transportation Committee. We hope to have them sooner rather than later because the new rules are going to really kick in August. and the applications they're getting ready to get them online. So by March, I think the rules will be, officially promulgated, and they'll be ready to come out, and they'll be disseminating those new rules to every business that has participated in outdoor dining, to the bids. I did request that DOT come to an upcoming meeting, and I know Leroy's still on the call, and we'll work that out in the next month or two or three, hopefully before the summer recess. So we're all ready once the applications come in. Is that good, Leroy, do you think?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
Now, but there is on the website, it gives a detailed of the program, exactly what the structure should look like, the fee structure, everything. We already have it on the website.
Yeah, at the community board, many of the district managers were concerned, not so much concerned, but really wanted to work with DOT on the application process, what the
Right.
expectations are, the timing, and training for board members as to what to look for in terms of making our advisory opinion. And that's something the team was working on, and so they would be happy to share with us. Many of us are familiar with the sidewalk cafes. We had reviewed them in years past. This is going to be similar. There are different rules for the sidewalk versus the street cafes. In terms of review period, I think there are 40 days for the sidewalk and then 30 days for the street for the review process. It's thoroughly vetted first by a team at DOT that's going to be handling those applications. So once they are signed off by DOT, they'll be referred to the community board. And we're looking forward to learning all about that process. We had a nice overview, but I just wanted to let the committee members know it's something that we've worked on in the past.
Quick question there. Will we have like an additional application that business will need to fill out, or will we be relying on the DOT application for us to review?
That's a great question. So DOT will have a questionnaire, and most district managers felt that community boards should create their own, Google Doc, or, similarly to what we do for liquor licenses, and what questions we would like to ask applicants once we're notified of an upcoming application. Next, Jack, following our last Traffic and Transportation Committee, asked me to reach out to both DOT and the local precinct about pedestrian safety educational outreach efforts. I spoke to the 68th precinct, and they are open to any locations that the board would like to present to them for educational outreach. And I spoke to Leroy Branch, and Leroy shared with me that there's a whole unit at DOT that provides educational outreach, and we should feel free to submit any locations. The 68th precinct on November 26th had an educational outreach at 92nd Street and Fort Hamilton Parkway. On January 23rd, they were out on 86th Street and 4th Avenue. On February 2nd, they were in front of 9000 Shore Road at 90th Street and Shore Road. The crash data that Jack did such a great job putting together for our last meeting, we put together a list of the top 10 locations of pedestrian crashes, and thought that was a good starting point because it was a reasonable amount of, a list of 10 streets, and highlight those near schools and that were heavily traveled perhaps by seniors. So pulling out that data, the list came to 65th Street at 4th Avenue, Bay Ridge Avenue at 5th, 92nd at Fort Hamilton Parkway, 86th at 5th, 86th at Fort Hamilton Parkway, 68th at 4th Avenue, Bay Ridge Avenue at 3rd, Ovington Avenue at 7th Avenue southbound, 65th Street at Fort Hamilton Parkway, 65th Street at 7th Avenue, Bay Ridge Parkway at 14th Avenue. And also to share with members of the committee, we had mentioned that their school crossing guard on 7th Avenue southbound was no longer there, and we had received many, many calls of concern about that location. And I'm happy to report that that position is now being filled temporarily until the new graduating class. I think is any day now is going to be graduating. And so I did notice that over the last 2 days. So those were the 3 quick issues that I had as a follow-up from our meeting last month, Jack.
Yeah, and I think one other follow-up was that DOT came back and requested that we supply a list of T intersections that are unmarked, right?
Yeah, so I have this, I'm sorry, yes, Jack, I have the T intersection list. So the district office has received, we put together a list of calls that we've received from residents about problematic T intersections that have already been studied by DOT, and traffic control devices were denied. Those include Ridge Boulevard at 70th Street, where there is a painted crosswalk. At the T intersection, there is no traffic control device. There is one of those new white signs that say yield to pedestrians, or stop for pedestrians, not yield, stop for pedestrians. I'm sorry, there's a stop sign that says stop for pedestrians. And we have had a few calls of residents in that area saying that needs some enforcement, because it's a little tricky having a painted crosswalk, no traffic control device, and cars not adhering to stopping when they're pedestrians in the crosswalk. I did speak to Leroy about this issue about, some of the locations that have been studied and denied, and I'm going to be sending all of those DOT numbers to kind of get an update and a feel of when they were last studied, to see if new studies can be initiated. Also that 68th Street and Owl's Head Court, same, there's a painted crosswalk, and a DOT study yielded a denial request for a traffic control device, as well as Fort Hamilton Parkway and 100th Street. This was brought up, as you know, many of you know, at many of our board meetings at the Fort Hamilton Senior Center. It's directly outside the Fort Hamilton Senior Center. That's a T intersection that does not have a painted crosswalk and has been denied many times for a traffic control device. I don't know when the last time was. So we're going to find that out and perhaps put that again on a list to study for senior safety as a T intersection. The remaining Ts include Ridge Boulevard at 90th Street, Fort Hamilton Parkway at Marine Avenue, where there's a study underway. 12th Avenue and 62nd Street is also a school crossing that we recently received requests for. It's a T intersection along the 62nd Street railway, and the 12th Avenue does have a crosswalk, but there's no traffic control device there. Another location so that the list is about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 T intersections, and I'll be sending those over to DOT. Jack?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'll open up to the rest of the committee here. What do we think are further suggestions we can do with the data that we have? I know Josephine had circulated that around. We have lots of ideas from last meeting. I'm not sure if anyone has had more time to think through what things we can suggest to DOT, to NYPD to work through some additional issues.
Dean, you have your hand raised, and then Daniel.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a Transportation Alternatives just came out with a report of theirs reviewing the last 10 years of Vision Zero. I just glanced through it, but it might be worth a look for the committee. I saw a couple of general things in there that definitely would shed light on some of the causes and types of accidents. I just wanted to share that with everybody. I mean, it's not specific. What we have is great, specific to our community, but we might be able to get some good ideas out of the report.
Thanks, Dean.
Josephine, I'm sorry, my raise hand thing is just not working, but this is Diane. I just wanted to raise again the intersection. You did say 86th Street and Fort Hamilton Parkway, and I find it very concerning that we have an area there where we have a turning lane onto 86th Street, and the remaining lane is shared by a bicycle lane as well as a car lane, and the two kind of they are one lane for all intents and purposes. And I find that that is a very, very dangerous area right there between as you approach from 85th Street towards 86th Street on Fort Hamilton Parkway.
So that's Fort Hamilton Parkway heading southbound, because I know we've looked at this, right? Fort Hamilton Parkway heading southbound, making that right-hand turn to the west on 86th Street, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a bus stop there too?
Leroy, I will share that I know I've shared that with you before, but I'll send that out to you tomorrow morning to show you what Diane is speaking about.
Is there a bus stop there too?
There is a bus.
There is a bus stop, the
Mhm.
same place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Daniel, I think you have.
Yeah, so the one thing I just wanted to flag, and I suggested this last time too, is that, you know, the next time we have the DOT come to talk to us about the BQE redesign, which I don't know when that's going to be. So, you know, but whenever that is, I think we should have, you know, at least among those top 10 intersections that Josephine just mentioned, the ones that are sort of, I would say, within a block or two of the BQE. We should have that list ready for the DOT to sort of talk about the, you know, most dangerous areas for, you know, I would assume in a lot of those places, it's probably trucks or just, you know, regular cars coming off of the BQE and, you know, coming onto the local streets. So,
Okay, we'll do. Thanks, Dan. Okay. Jack? No one
Okay.
here? Oh, we're good. We're good in the room.
So I also want to just raise a general question to the group here. With I guess with the TNC taking on like pedestrian safety, should this be a continuous regular conversation that we have as a primary outcome? Should there be a report that was produced, like for example the 2011 report that Josephine had produced? Should that be an outcome, or is there another outcome that we're imagining for the committee to take back to the broader board? So like a report or like a continuous review. Like what are we expecting here?
I like the idea of a renewed report. I mean, you know, it's been what, I guess 13 years if the last one was 2011. You know, I will say I don't exactly know what goes into that because I haven't been here as long, but you know, I think really a report that sort of sums up, you know, either what the most dangerous corridors are and what our options are, or if we go, you know, priority intersections. I don't really have an opinion on that at the moment, but I do think some sort of report would really be helpful.
And I think, Jack, too, I could share some of the work that went into that report, the surveys, some of the rating systems, it was a committee work that was done at that time period too. So I could send you some of the backup work, and then we could talk about that at, you know, the next meeting.
Okay.
If you. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, you again? Or was that from before? I just saw you.
No, I was just gonna say, sorry, real quick. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that something that on a regular basis reports out on, you know, instances and then outcomes in terms of what's changing in regard to, you know, what's being reported in terms of traffic and safety. I mean, I know I had expressed to you and Dorothy, Josephine, about, you know, the reckless driver who drove out on the pier and ignored the unauthorized sign that they're not supposed to be on Pier 69 and then proceeded to peel out gloriously, you know, after breaking the law. But things like that are really important and need to be able to, you know, be in touch with that on a regular basis. So absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and DOT and parks are working on that, and it's so important that, you know, any issue of concern that you have, you know, in between meetings, you can always reach out to the district office of something like what Chris had just mentioned. But certainly, you know, focusing in on these areas is so important on a regular basis, and producing a report, I think is awesome. I think would be really helpful.
It really provided a comprehensive picture of what was happening And it also gives us kind of like a mile marker as we're looking at things now. And, you know, places that you mentioned, some intersections are still issues now. And, you know, it helps us to see where things have changed for positive, where things still need to continue to change and to continue to need, you know, our attention as a community board. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I think Josephine will coordinate on that a little bit, and identify what the proper next step should be to kickstart on the report, using some of the 2011 information, maybe gather some more information over the coming months as well. Okay. Any other thoughts from the group? All right. I think that's the end of our agenda. Josephine, did I miss anything?
No, that's everything. Oh, Dean has a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, but I reviewed the report from 13 years ago, and a tremendous amount of work went into that. And I'm going to say for the most part, I might be slightly wrong, a lot of what we mentioned in there, we never got to follow up with. And this is not a knock on DOT. DOT has limited resources. So to spend the energy and time to do a report like that, which was so intensive, I'm not sure what the return is. To do a smaller one on what we're focusing on would be good, so we follow up on. But again, you know, every agency has limits. It's a big city, and they can only put in so much time and energy into each area. So I think if we do the report, it should be much more limited.
To some extent, you know, we have the community needs statement that we do once a year, right? This could be an input to the following year's community needs statement, where like we did a report and we identified these few intersections that goes directly within that prioritized list there.
Great.
Okay. I have one more last thing. So DOT. Sorry, go ahead then.
Oh, I just wanted to maybe say too, but on the burden, like, I don't know if it'll be another 13 years before we do this, but like, if we think of this as a sort of, once in a decade type project, like, I don't think we're going to be doing this every year. I think it's also just kind of good to like establish, priorities for the next, longer period of time. However long that is, I don't expect that we would have the DOT do everything we would suggest in a larger report. I just, think it would be useful to flag for coming years. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. So obviously, everyone in this community will have a voice in shaping the outcome of that report. So that's helpful for the context. And I think, yeah, I will see how it goes. I think the more we can put in a report, the more energy we can put in a report, the better report will be, the more focused the report will be, just by nature of us going through our discussions of that. Just one last thing to post to this group. DOT is actively removing outdoor dining structures. Just to highlight two: Boca de Cielo 8513 3rd Avenue and Kitty Kiernan's Bar at 9715 3rd Avenue. So I think if there are other outdoor dining structures that are not currently being removed, we should flag that to Leroy and DOT, because it seems like they're actively being removed.
Ones that are abandoned or in poor repair. DOT has made several visits, several outreach, and once that's exhausted, right, Leroy, if I'm correct, then they're slated for removal.
Josephine, if they're using it like storage, storing tables and other things in there, is that okay, or is that?
Right, so that's not permitted now, and it's not going to be permitted in the future. So we could certainly send that into enforcement, and DOT would go out. So if you have any locations, you can report them, or you could send them out to the district office, and I will send them along for sure. Okay, team.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Otherwise, do I have a adjournment hand raising at all?
Yeah, I see a bunch.
Seems like it. All right. Thank you so much.